The town had always believed that safety came at a cost, but no one I knew had ever dared to calculate the price. In Belmere, people did not question the order of things, they repeated it, they inherited it. They wrapped it in softer words until fear sounded like duty and surrender sounded like peace. From the outside, Belmere looked like the kind of American town people trusted on sight. White porches, trimmed hedges, church bells on Sunday, flags that moved lazily in the summer wind. But beneath all that clean stillness was an arrangement everyone felt, and no one named too loudly. Every 10 years, the council made a selection, one girl was chosen. She left. The town prospered. And the people called that proof. I had grown up under that quiet rule the way other girls grew up under weather. It was simply there, hanging over everything. Mothers smiled too tightly when their daughters turned 16. Fathers became softer and sadder in ways they did not explain. Every family with a daughter lived with the same buried terror, though most of them hid it behind discipline, religion, and the old Bamir language about honor. They said the town endured because the chosen girl carried its burden. They said sacrifice was part of the blessing. They said the council saw what ordinary people could not. No one ever explained why the chosen girls never seemed to come back for holidays, weddings, or funerals. No one explained why their names slowly disappeared from conversation, as if memory itself had been instructed to keep its distance. I noticed things other people trained themselves not to notice. That had always been my problem. My mother used to tell me I looked at the world too long. Like I expected it to confess something. Maybe I did. I noticed the way older women paused when certain names were mentioned. I noticed how my history teacher skipped over 3 different years in the town archive and laughed it off like clerical damage. I noticed that the framed portraits of selected girls, hanging in the municipal building, stopped after a certain decade, replaced by painted landscapes no one had asked for. Most of all, I noticed the tension in people's faces whenever the selection drifted close enough to become real again. That summer, Belmere felt like a place holding its breath. The council had not posted the date, but everybody knew it was near. You could feel it in the grocery store aisles, in the clipped politeness between neighbors, in the way girls my age suddenly became visible to the entire town. People looked at us more carefully, measuring without appearing to measure. Some with sympathy. Some with relief that it might not be their daughter. Some with the cold curiosity of people who wanted the ritual to continue, as long as someone else paid for it. My father carried that tension like a stone inside his chest. He had become quieter over the past month, lingering at the dinner table after everyone else stood, staring out the kitchen window toward the road that led into town. My younger brother Miles was too young to understand why our house had grown so careful. My mother understood everything and said almost nothing. She kept busy in the way frightened people do, wiping already clean counters, folding the same towels twice, opening windows just to close them again. When she looked at me, her eyes softened first, and then darkened with guilt, as if loving me had become dangerous. On the morning it happened, the air felt wrong before the sound came too still. Too polished. Even the birds seemed cautious. I was standing on the back steps with a notebook in my lap, tracing dates I had copied from old cemetery records. 3 selected girls, 3 family plots. No burial dates, no cause of death. Just names carved into stone with a strange finality that made my skin prickle. I had started building patterns in secret months ago, and the patterns had started building something back. A shape, a lie. Something no one wanted spoken aloud. Then the sirens began. They were not emergency sirens. Belmere reserved a different sound for storms and another for fire. This one was slower, ceremonial. Designed to roll through the town like a command disguised as tradition. Every muscle in my body tightened at once. Across the street, a woman froze halfway through watering her roses. Somewhere down the block, a screen door slammed. The whole town seemed to stop in the exact same second. As if we had all been trained by the same invisible hand. My mother stepped onto the porch behind me. Elena, just my name, nothing else. but the way she said it made my throat go dry. We could already hear movement on the street. Engines, shoes on pavement, doors opening. Sir Belmere had a way of gathering fast when fear was involved. My father came in from the side yard, his face pale in a way I had never seen before. He looked from my notebook to the road, then back to me, and I knew before anyone spoke that whatever hope he had been holding on to was gone. The council is making the round, he said. My brother appeared in the hallway, sensing enough danger to go quiet. My mother reached for my hand, but I had already stood. From the front yard came the crackle of a loudspeaker, followed by the deep, polished voice of Councilman Reeves, a man who smiled like kindness belonged to him. Be authority of the Belmere Preservation Council. The selection has been made. The words floated through the neighborhood with practiced calm. Curtains shifted in nearby windows. I felt every house listening, every porch, every secret. Then came the footsteps up our walkway. 3 council vehicles stood at the curb. Men in dark suits stepped aside as Councilman Reeves approached our porch with a folded paper in his hand. Behind him gathered neighbors who had not been invited but had come anyway, drawn by dread and hunger in equal measure. Some faces looked sorry. Some looked relieved. One woman stared at me with the kind of pity that felt like an insult. Reeves opened the paper, though he already knew what it said. For the continued stability, prosperity and protection of Belmere, he announced, the council has named this decade's selected daughter. He paused, and in that pause I felt the entire town lean forward. Elena Carter. My mother made a sound I had never heard from her before. My father did not move at all. Across the yard, someone whispered, God help them. Another voice, low and ugly, muttered that girls like me always got too proud, too educated, too eager to forget their place in a town built by better families. It was not loud, but it was loud enough. Belmere's cruelty rarely needed volume. It preferred precision. Reeves looked at me expectantly, waiting for collapse, gratitude, obedience, some familiar shape of surrender. The whole town was waiting for the same thing. But all I felt was the final piece sliding into place. The dates. The missing records. The vanished girls. The fear in every parent's face. It was not tradition. It was management. It was control polished into ritual until no one remembered the difference. I lifted my head and looked straight at the councilman. And before anyone on that porch could stop me, I understood exactly what I was going to say next. In Belmere, obedience was not taught, it was absorbed. It lived in the pauses between conversations, in the way people lowered their voices when certain topics drifted too close to truth. And now, as I stood on that porch with my name still hanging in the air, I could feel the entire town waiting for me to behave the way every girl before me had behaved. To accept, to lower my eyes, to become smaller. Instead, I stood still. Councilman Reeves watched me carefully, his smile thinning just slightly at the edges. Elena, he said, his tone soft but controlled. This is an honor your family should be proud of. Proud. The word moved through the crowd like permission. Heads nodded. A few neighbors straightened, as if relieved to return to familiar language. My mother's grip on my arm tightened, not to restrain me, but to steady herself. This is how we survive, Reeves continued, now speaking louder, not just to me but to everyone gathered. Every generation has done its part. Belmere stands today because families understand sacrifice. I turned my head slightly and met his eyes. And the girls? I asked quietly. What do they get? A ripple moved through the crowd. It wasn't loud but it was sharp. Questions were not part of the ceremony. Reeves didn't answer immediately. Instead, he smiled again, but this time it felt rehearsed. They become part of something greater. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not fear. Something closer to recognition. Behind me, my father finally moved. That's enough, he said, his voice low but strained. Elena, go inside. It wasn't an order. It was a plea. The crowd lingered longer than necessary, watching, measuring, waiting for the moment I would fold. When I didn't, something shifted. The sympathy in a few faces faded. In its place came discomfort, then quiet judgment. By evening, Belmere had already begun adjusting to my refusal. Sure, without me ever having said the words. People stopped waving when they passed our house. Conversations cut off when I entered the store. A woman I had known my entire life looked at me, as if I had broken something sacred simply by standing still. It wasn't anger that spread first, it was distance. At dinner, no one spoke for a long time. The sound of forks against plates felt too loud in the silence. You don't understand what this means, my mother said finally, her voice trembling in a way she tried to hide. This isn't something you can question your way out of. I'm not trying to question my way out, I said carefully. I'm trying to understand why no one else ever did. My father exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them. Because understanding doesn't protect you, he said. Obedience does. That's not protection, I replied. That's control. The word landed heavier than I expected. My mother looked down. My father's jaw tightened. You think we don't see it? He asked quietly. You think we haven't asked ourselves the same questions? His voice cracked slightly. What just learned to stop asking? That was the moment I understood the real cost of Belmere's survival. It wasn't just the girls who were taken. It was the questions everyone buried to keep going. The knock on the door came just after sunset. 3 men stood outside. Not in suits this time but in the neutral, almost invisible uniforms Belmere used for enforcement, clean, polite, impossible to argue with. One of them held a thin folder. Mr. Carter, he said, nodding respectfully. We're here to provide guidance. Everything in this town came wrapped in softer words. They sat in our living room like guests who had no intention of leaving quickly. The man with the folder placed it on the table between us and opened it with careful precision. Elana has been selected, he began, though no one in the room needed reminding. We understand that this can be overwhelming, but it's important that the transition happens smoothly. What happens if it doesn't? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a brief second, the politeness slipped. That wouldn't be in anyone's best interest, he said. My mother's hand found mine again. My father didn't look at me at all. You have 3 days, the man continued. Use that time wisely. Prepare yourself. Prepare your family. And if I don't? I asked. This time, he didn't answer with words. He simply closed the folder. That was answer enough. After they left, the house felt smaller, not physically, but like the walls had moved closer listening. I went to my room and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the notebook still clutched in my hand. The dates. The missing names. The pattern that no one wanted to see. 3 days. That wasn't time to prepare. That was time to surrender. But something inside me had already crossed a line I couldn't step back over. That night, as Belmere settled into its careful, obedient silence, I made a decision no one in that town had ever made before. And I knew, the moment it formed, that it would fracture everything. The next morning, Belmere was watching me, not openly, not directly. That wasn't how this town worked. It watched the way people always watch, what they fear might disrupt their comfort. Through windows, through half-finished conversations, through the quiet tracking of movement that pretended not to be attention. I could feel it as I walked down Main Street. Every step I took carried weight. Not because of what I had done, but because of what I hadn't done yet. I hadn't accepted. I hadn't submitted. And in Belmere, delay itself was a form of defiance. By midday, the pressure had taken shape. A small crowd gathered outside our house. Not a protest. Not officially. Just people standing a little too close together. Speaking a little too loudly about things that were meant to be overheard. She's going to ruin it for everyone. They all think they're different until they understand what's at stake. Some families forget their place. The last one wasn't subtle. It didn't need to be. Belmere had always had a way of reminding certain people where they belonged, without ever saying it directly. My last name. My background, the way my father had never quite fit into the town's inner circles. It had always been there, quiet and waiting. Now it had a reason to surface. Inside the house, the tension was worse. My mother moved like she was trying not to break something invisible. My father avoided looking at me entirely, Miles stayed close to the walls, watching all of us like he was trying to understand how a family could come apart without anyone touching each other. You need to say yes, my mother said finally, her voice barely holding together. Alana, please. This doesn't end well for people who don't follow the rules. It doesn't end at all for the girls who do. I replied. She flinched like I had struck her. That's enough, my father said sharply. Sure, but there was no strength behind it. Just exhaustion. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's not enough. None of this is enough. Silence filled the room again, heavier this time. That afternoon the council sent someone different. Not Reeves. Not the polite men with folders. Daniel Reeves. I recognized him immediately, though I had only ever seen him at a distance. He wasn't like the others. He didn't carry himself with authority. He carried himself with awareness. I'm not here to enforce anything, he said as he stepped inside. Just to talk. No one believed that. Not even him. He sat across from me, studying my face in a way that made it clear he wasn't looking for weakness. He was looking for certainty. You've already decided, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I answered. A long pause stretched between us. You understand what this does, he said quietly. Not just to you. I understand what the system does, I replied. I just don't think it should continue. Something shifted in his expression then. Not agreement. Not yet. But recognition. They're not going to let this go easily, he said. I'm not asking them to. Another pause. This one heavier. There are things you don't know, he added. Then maybe it's time someone told me. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then stood. 3 days, he said. That's what they've given you. I won't need that long. That surprised him. For the first time, something like concern crossed his face. You should, he said quietly. But I shook my head, because the truth had already settled inside me. Unmovable. And for the first time in Belmere's history, the delay was over. The decision was no longer forming, it was ready. And the moment it left my mouth, nothing in this town would ever be the same. Sometimes the most powerful act is not loud rebellion, but a quiet refusal that cannot be controlled. By the time the sun dipped low over Belmere, the town had already decided what it expected from me. Not courage. Not truth. Just compliance, wrapped in something that looked like dignity. The square had filled again, faster this time. Like people were afraid they might miss the moment everything returned to normal. Because that was what they needed, normal. Not justice. I stood at the center of it. Aware of every eye, every judgment, every quiet calculation being made about me. The council had positioned themselves at the front, elevated just enough to remind everyone where authority lived. Councilman Reeves spoke first, his voice carrying easily across the crowd. Alana Carter, he said, calm and practiced, you've been given time to prepare. The council now asks you to formally accept your role in the selection. There it was. Not a request. A ritual. I could feel my mother somewhere behind me, her presence trembling without sound. My father stood still, like a man already bracing for loss. The town leaned forward again, waiting for the familiar ending. I didn't look at them. I won't accept it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hesitate. I didn't soften the words. For a moment, nothing happened. It wasn't silence, it was absence. Like the town itself had forgotten how to respond. Then the reaction came, but not all at once. Shock moved first. You could see it ripple through faces, displacing certainty. Then confusion. Then something sharper. What did she say? She refused. No, she doesn't understand. Reeves didn't speak immediately. He watched me, studying not just what I said, but how I said it. When he finally stepped forward, the calm in his expression had tightened. Alana, he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound personal. This is not something you refuse. This is something you accept with honor. That's what you call it? I replied. But honor doesn't disappear, people. That landed harder than I expected. A murmur spread, uneven, unsettled. The word disappear hung in the air like something forbidden. Reeves' smile returned, but this time it felt controlled. You're emotional, he said gently, turning slightly so the crowd could see him as reasonable. That's understandable. But fear can distort perspective. I'm not afraid. I said. And that was the problem. You could see it in the way people shifted. Fear was expected. Fear was manageable. But calm refusal, that was something else entirely. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice sharper, less polished. This isn't just about you, he said. The stability of Belmere depends on this system. If you reject it, you put everyone at risk. There it was. The shift, not duty, not honor, blame. So it's my responsibility to protect the town, I asked. But the town doesn't protect me. A few people looked away. Others didn't. She's selfish, someone muttered from the crowd. She thinks she's better than us. That's what happens when you let P get their place. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Belmere's cruelty was always more effective when it sounded casual. I felt it then, not fear, but isolation beginning to take shape around me. People I had grown up with no longer saw me as one of them. I wasn't Alina anymore. I was a disruption, a risk, a problem. Reeves raised his hand slightly, silencing the crowd. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said, his tone shifting just enough to reveal the edge beneath it. No one is asking you to suffer. You're being given a role that benefits everyone. Except the ones who disappear, I said, this time. The reaction was immediate. That's enough, the elder snapped. You speak as if you know things you don't. Then explain it, I said. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because of what I said, but because of what they didn't. For the first time, the council didn't have an immediate answer. And the crowd noticed. It was small, subtle, but it was there, a crack in something that had always appeared solid. Reeves recovered quickly. This discussion is over, he said firmly. You've made your position clear. Yes, I said. And you understand the consequences? I held his gaze. I understand more than you think. Another pause. This one heavier. Then he nodded once, almost to himself. Very well, he said. If you refuse to accept the selection voluntarily, the council will require your presence for formal review. The words sounded procedural, controlled. But everyone understood what they meant. This was no longer a choice. As the crowd began to disperse, some angry, some shaken, some avoiding my eyes entirely, I felt the full weight of what I had done settle into place. My mother didn't come to me. My father didn't speak. Only Daniel remained where he stood at the edge of the square, watching me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Not judgment. Not approval. Something else. Something closer to realization. They weren't expecting that, he said quietly as I passed him. No, I replied. They weren't. He hesitated for a moment, then added, almost under his breath, be careful. You didn't just refuse them. I stopped. What do you mean? He looked toward the council. Then back at me. You exposed them. That word settled deeper than anything else that day. Before I could respond, one of the officials approached. His posture formal, his tone final. Elena Carter, he said. You are to report to the council chamber tomorrow morning? I nodded once. Not because I agreed, but because I was ready. As I turned away, I felt it, not fear, not doubt, but something sharper. Because whatever waited for me inside that room, it wasn't going to be punishment, it was going to be something far more dangerous. They were going to pay attention. Power does not fear disobedience, it fears exposure. The council chamber did not look like a place where fear lived. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped inside. It was clean, controlled, designed to feel neutral, almost comforting. Polished wood, soft lighting, chairs arranged with careful symmetry. It wasn't meant to intimidate. It was meant to convince. That was more dangerous. I walked forward slowly, aware of how quiet the room was. Not empty, just silent in a way that felt intentional. Councilman Reeves sat at the center, flanked by the same elders who had stood in the square the day before. But here, inside these walls, they looked different. Less like community leaders. More like something structured, coordinated, deliberate. Elena Carter, Reeves said, his tone measured. Thank you for coming. Not for reporting. For coming. I didn't have a choice, I replied. A faint smile crossed his face. Everyone has a choice. That's what makes this process meaningful. That was the first crack. Because nothing about this had ever been presented as a choice before. I took the seat across from them, noticing how they watched me, not just with authority, but with interest. Like I wasn't just a participant in the process anymore. I was a variable. You've created concern, one of the elders said, leaning forward slightly. His voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it. The community depends on stability. Your refusal introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty for who? I asked. For everyone, he replied quickly, too quickly. I let the silence sit for a moment before speaking again. If the system is stable, one person refusing shouldn't threaten it. Another pause. This one longer. Reeves folded his hands together. You're approaching this emotionally, he said. The selection isn't about individuals. It's about maintaining balance. Then explain the balance, I said. That was where their language started to shift. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. The town has prospered for generations under this system, Reeves said. Low crime, economic growth, social cohesion. These are measurable outcomes. Measurable. I noticed that word immediately. Measured how? I asked. A flicker passed between them, small, almost invisible. But it was there. Through long-term observation. Another council member replied. That's not a measurement, I said. The room changed then. Subtly, but completely. They weren't used to being questioned this precisely. They were used to belief, to acceptance, to emotional responses they could redirect. Not this. You're focusing on the wrong details, Reeves said, his tone tightening just slightly. The important thing is that the system works. For who? I repeated. No one answered right away. Instead, one of the elders shifted in his seat and spoke more firmly. The selection ensures continuity. It removes variables that could disrupt the structure we've built. Variables. I felt something click into place. Variables. I repeated. You mean people? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. The air in the room thickened. Reeves leaned forward now, his calm no longer as effortless. You're interpreting this in a way that isn't accurate. Then correct me, I said. Another pause. Longer this time, you're intelligent. He said finally, you see patterns. But patterns without full context can be misleading. I have enough context to know the girls don't come back. That landed harder than anything else I had said. One of the elders exhaled sharply. Another looked away for just a second too long. Reeves didn't move. Those women fulfill their roles, he said carefully. Their lives take a different direction. That no one is allowed to see. That no one needs to see. There it was. Not protection. Control of information. I leaned back slightly, studying them now the way they had been studying me. This isn't tradition, I said quietly. It's management. The word hung in the air like something dangerous. For the first time since I entered the room, no one tried to correct me immediately. And that was the confirmation. One of the elders spoke again, but this time his voice carried something new, caution. There are systems in place you don't understand, Safeguards, metrics that ensure the town remains functional, metrics. Again, you're not protecting the town, I said. You're maintaining it. Reeves' expression hardened slightly. Those are not mutually exclusive. They are if people have to disappear to keep it working. Silence. Heavy final. Then, something unexpected happened. Reeves leaned back, not forward, not defensive. Back. As if recalibrating. This conversation has gone far enough, he said, his tone returning to something controlled, but colder now. You've made it clear that you're not ready to accept this election. I'm not going to accept it, I said. He nodded once. Then we'll give you more time. That surprised me. Not the delay. The reason behind it. You don't want a decision, I said slowly. You want compliance. No one denied it. You have one final opportunity, Reeves continued. 3 days. After that, the council will proceed with or without your cooperation. With or without, I repeated. Yes, there it was again, not choice, execution. I stood, the weight of everything settling into something sharper now. Clearer as I turned to leave. I felt their eyes on me, not with authority anymore. With calculation. As if they were trying to determine how dangerous I actually was. When I reached the door, Reeves spoke one last time. Be careful, Elena, he said. There are consequences to misunderstanding systems like this. I paused, my hand on the door. Then I looked back at him. I understand it better than you think, I said. And for the first time I saw it. Not control. Not certainty. I stepped out into the daylight, the air feeling different against my skin. Because now I knew. This system wasn't ancient. It wasn't sacred. It wasn't even natural. It was engineered. And as I walked away from that building, one realization settled in with absolute clarity. This system wasn't protecting the town. It was hiding something. Every system has a weakness, and sometimes it wears the face of loyalty. I felt it before I saw it, the shift. Belmer no longer watched me from a distance. It watched me closely now. Intentionally. Every movement I made carried consequence. Every place I went had eyes that lingered just a second too long. It wasn't open hostility, not yet. It was something quieter, more controlled. Surveillance disguised as concern. When I stepped out of the council building, the air should have felt lighter. Instead, it felt measured. Like even the silence had structure. That's when I noticed him. Daniel Reeves was standing across the street, not in uniform this time, not positioned like authority. Just present. Watching but not the way the others watched. There was no judgment in his expression. No pressure, just awareness. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I started walking. He didn't stop me. He didn't follow immediately either. But I could feel it, he was there, keeping pace without closing the distance. It wasn't pursuit. It was alignment. You asked questions they didn't expect? He said finally, his voice low even. I didn't stop walking. They didn't answer them either. No. He said. They didn't. There was something in the way he said it, not agreement, not yet, but recognition. Like he had been standing near those same questions for a long time, just never close enough to touch them. You've seen it too, I said. That made him pause. Not long. Just enough. I've seen patterns, he replied carefully. Patterns don't just exist, I said. They're built. That landed. We walked in silence for a few steps after that, but it wasn't empty silence. It was shared, charged. Like something was forming between us without needing to be spoken directly. You shouldn't keep pushing, he said eventually. Not like this. Why? I asked. Because it's dangerous. Yes. For who? He didn't answer immediately. And that was the answer. By the time I reached home, the pressure I'd already tightened. 2 unfamiliar cars were parked down the street. Not official, not marked. But they didn't belong there. My neighbors weren't pretending anymore either. Conversation stopped when I passed. Doors closed just a little too quickly. Inside the house it was worse. My father looked like he hadn't slept. My mother didn't even try to hide the fear in her eyes anymore. They've increased observation. My father said quietly. They're calling it precaution. They're watching us, I replied. He didn't deny it. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because everything had become too clear. The system, the language, the control disguised as necessity, and the gaps. The missing pieces that no one was allowed to follow. But someone had. The next morning Daniel came back. This time, he didn't stand at a distance. I shouldn't be here, he said as soon as I opened the door. Then why are you? He hesitated. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. I've been reviewing internal records, he said. Not officially. Something tightened in my chest. They don't match what we've been told. Of course they didn't. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure slipping, just enough to show the weight of what he was carrying. The selected girls, none of them are recorded as part of governance. He continued, no integration into leadership. No advisory roles. No documented contributions after selection. So where do they go? I asked. That's the problem, he said. The records just stop. Not transition. Not change stop. A silence settled between us. Heavier than anything we had said so far. That's not tradition, I said quietly. No, he replied. That was the moment something shifted in him. Not fully, not. But enough. You were right about something else, he added. They're not just watching you. I felt it before he finished the sentence. They're tracking response patterns, he said. Behavioral reactions, community shifts. You're not just a participant anymore. I'm data, I said. He nodded. Yes, that word landed colder than anything else. Because it confirmed what I had already begun to understand. This wasn't about belief. This wasn't about culture. This was design. And I was interfering with it. I can't protect you from this, Daniel said, his voice quieter now. Not officially. I'm not asking you to, I replied, another pause. But you're still here, I added. That forced something out into the open. His loyalty. His conflict. I've spent years believing this system was necessary, he said slowly. That whatever it was doing, it was justified. And now? I asked. He looked at me directly then, no hesitation left. Now I think it's hiding something we were never meant to question. That wasn't a question. The twist came next. There's one more thing, he said. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. What? He exhaled slowly. The system flags certain individuals before selection, he said. Not just based on age or eligibility but behavior. My mind started connecting it before he finished. What kind of behavior? I asked. He didn't look away. Independent thinking? He said, pattern recognition. Resistance to social conditioning. A cold realization settled in. They didn't choose me randomly, I said. No, he replied. They chose me. He shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly. They chose you because you already had. That was the moment everything locked into place. Not tradition, not sacrifice. Selection, targeting, removal. Daniel's voice dropped lower, almost like he was saying it for the first time to himself. This system, he said slowly, it's not selecting leaders. I didn't breathe. It's removing variables. And just like that, Belmere stopped being a town. It became something else entirely. The most dangerous truth is not the one people hide, but the one people were never meant to question. By the third day, Belmere didn't feel like a town anymore. It felt like a system tightening around itself. The square was already full when I arrived. Not loud, not chaotic, just heavy. The kind of silence that forms when people are not waiting for an answer, but bracing for one. Faces I had known my entire life looked different now. Not just afraid. Wavering. Deciding. The council stood at the front again, elevated, controlled, composed. Councilman Reeves looked exactly the same as before, calm. Confident, certain that whatever happened next would remain within his control. But something had already shifted. Because this time, I wasn't the only one who knew. Elena Carter, Reeves began, his voice steady, carrying across the square with practiced ease. You were given time to reconsider your position. The council now requires your final answer. Final. Not request. Not discussion. Resolution. I stepped forward, feeling every eye follow the movement. I've already given my answer, I said. A ripple moved through the crowd, quieter than before, but sharper. Reeves nodded slowly, as if he had expected that. Then you understand the consequences of continued refusal. No, I replied. That caught him off guard, not the refusal. But the response? I understand the truth, I continued. And that matters more than your consequences. That was the moment the tension shifted, not outwardly, internally. Because the word truth doesn't just challenge authority. It destabilizes it. You are not in a position to define truth. One of the elders snapped. Stepping forward. You are in a position to comply. Then why are you still explaining? I asked. That hit. Not loudly, but precisely. Before they could respond, a voice cut through the square. Because they need everyone to keep believing. The crowd turned instantly. Daniel, he wasn't supposed to step forward. Not like this, not publicly. But he did, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to believe. He had already chosen a side. Daniel Reeves, one of the elders, said sharply. This proceeding does not concern you. It concerns everyone. He replied, his voice didn't shake. That was the first break. Because Belmere had always been controlled through tone. Through calm. Through certainty. And now, that certainty had competition. You are out of line, the elder continued. No, Daniel said. I've just been in line long enough to see what it really is. The crowd shifted. Not away, but closer. Curiosity had begun to replace fear. And that was more dangerous than rebellion. Reeves stepped forward, his voice firmer now. Daniel, stand down. But Daniel didn't move. Instead he turned. Not to the council, but to the people. For generations, you've been told that the selection protects this town, he said. That it keeps everything stable? That is enough. Reeves warned. But it was already too late. Then explain the records. Daniel continued louder now. Explain why every selected girl disappears from documentation. Explain why there are no records of them contributing to leadership. No records of their lives after selection. A murmur spread, uneven, uncertain. Reeves' control didn't break. But it strained. These are confidential processes. No, Daniel cut in. They're erased processes. That word hit harder than anything else. Erased. The crowd reacted differently this time. Not immediate rejection. Not blind defense. Hesitation. Because somewhere buried under years of obedience, people remembered things they had chosen not to remember. My aunt was selected, a voice from the crowd said quietly. One never saw her again. Another voice followed. My grandmother said the same thing once, then she stopped talking about it. The cracks were spreading. You're distorting information. One of the elders snapped. This is dangerous, Daniel said. And then he said the thing that changed everything. It's dangerous because it's true. Silence, not absence. Wait, you're not protecting this town, he continued. You're controlling it. The selection doesn't choose leaders. He paused. And for a second, even the wind seemed to stop. It removes people who think too independently. People who question. People who don't follow. Every word landed heavier than the last. I felt it, not just in the crowd, but in myself. Because hearing it out loud made it undeniable. They weren't chosen. I said quietly. They were targeted. Daniel nodded slightly. Yes, that was the moment the fear changed. Before, people were afraid of losing stability. Now, they were afraid of what stability had cost them. Reeves stepped forward again, but something was different now. His authority hadn't disappeared, sure, but it no longer felt absolute. You're creating panic, he said. No, Daniel replied. I'm removing control. Didn't erupt. It shifted slowly, uncertainly. But undeniably people began looking at each other instead of the council. That had never happened before. Because the moment people stop looking at authority, authority weakens. I stood there in the center of it, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not victory. Responsibility. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. My refusal hadn't broken the system. It had exposed it, and now the town had to decide what to do with that truth. For the first time in generations, Belmere wasn't afraid of losing stability. It was afraid of understanding it. Control does not collapse all at once, it fractures the moment people stop believing in it. I felt the fracture before I saw it. It didn't begin with shouting or chaos. It began with hesitation. The kind that spreads quietly, passing from one person to another, until something once solid starts to loosen without anyone touching it. People in the crowd were no longer looking at the council. They were looking at each other. That had never happened before. For as long as Belmere had existed, authority had always been the center of gravity. Every decision, every fear, every belief pointed back to it. But now that pull had weakened, not broken. Just questioned. My sister was selected. A man said from somewhere behind me, his voice unsteady but rising. We were told she was honored. We never heard from her again. No one silenced him. That alone was new. Another voice followed. Then another. My mother stopped talking about her cousin after the selection. They told us not to ask questions. They told us it was disrespectful. Each statement wasn't loud. But together they formed something heavier than noise. Recognition. The council shifted slightly at the front, their control no longer as seamless. Reeves stepped forward again, trying to reclaim the center. This is exactly what happens when misinformation spreads, he said firmly. You are allowing confusion to replace order. But his voice didn't land the same way. Because for the first time, people weren't listening to him first. They were listening to themselves. That's not confusion, Daniel said beside me. That's memory. The word hit harder than anything else. Memory, not rebellion. Not chaos. Truth that had been buried. Reeves' expression tightened. You are undermining the stability of this entire community. No, I said, stepping forward before I could stop myself. You did that when you made people afraid to think. The crowd reacted, not with shock this time, sure, but with something quieter. Agreement. And that was when the council made their mistake. Guards. One of the elders said sharply, his voice cutting through the air. Restore order. It was the first time they had abandoned language. No more guidance. No more process. Just control. A few uniformed officers stepped forward from the edges of the square. Not aggressively, not violently. But their presence alone was enough to remind everyone what had always enforced the system. Fear. But it didn't land the same way anymore. Because now, people understood what that fear had been protecting. You're going to force this? Someone shouted. You said this was about honor? This isn't protection. It's control. The voices grew, not chaotic, but unified. Not loud enough to be called a riot, but strong enough to be felt. The officers hesitated. That was the second fracture. Because enforcement only works when people accept it. And now they weren't. I felt a hand grip mine, my mother. I turned, surprised. Her face was still afraid. But something else was there to resolve. She's not wrong, she said, her voice trembling but clear. My father stepped forward next. We were told this was necessary, he said. We were told this was how we kept our town safe. He looked at Reeves directly. You never told us what it was really doing. That moment mattered more than anything I had said. Because it wasn't coming from me anymore, it was coming from them. The people who had believed. The people who had obeyed. And now, the people who were beginning to see. Reeves looked around the square, and for the first time, I saw something break in his expression. Not panic, loss of control. You don't understand what you're risking, he said. No, Daniel replied. We understand exactly what we've been losing. Silence followed, not force chosen. The officers stepped back. No command. No announcement, just a quiet retreat. Sure, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted. The system didn't collapse with noise, it collapsed with absence. No one moved to enforce it. Sure, no one stepped forward to defend it. It simply stopped being believed. I stood there, feeling it unfold around me. Not as a victim. Not even as a rebel, but as something else entirely. A catalyst, not because I had destroyed anything, but because I had refused to carry it, and that refusal had spread. Slowly. Quietly, irreversibly. The council didn't speak again. They didn't need to. Everyone could see it. They no longer held the same power. Because that power had never been in them. It had been in the belief people placed in them. And now that belief was gone, but as the crowd began to shift, some stepping back, some staying still, all of them changed by what had just happened. A new silence began to form, different from before, heavier. Uncertain. Because something else had taken its place. A question no one in Belmere had ever needed to answer before. If the system was gone, what came next? Freedom does not begin when power falls, it begins when people decide what comes next. The silence that followed the collapse wasn't empty. It was unfinished. Belmere stood in that space together, not as a system anymore, but not yet as something new either. People didn't rush home. They didn't celebrate. They stayed. As if leaving too soon might undo what had just happened. Because for the first time in generations, no one was being told what to do next. And that was more unsettling than control had ever been. I could feel it in the way people looked around. Not upward, not toward the council, but at each other. Waiting, searching, realizing slowly that whatever came next would not be decided for them. It would be decided by them. That realization carried weight, not fear. Responsibility. This doesn't just end here, someone said quietly from the crowd. No one argued, because endings were simple. This wasn't, it was a beginning. The council remained at the front, but they no longer felt like the center of anything. They hadn't been removed. No one had forced them out. But something more permanent had happened. They had been seen. And once authority is seen clearly, it doesn't return to what it was. Reeves spoke again. Sure, but his voice no longer carried command. If the system is to change, he said carefully, then structure must replace it. Order must be maintained, for the first time. His words sounded like a request, not a directive. And who decides that structure? My father asked. Reeves hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Not just you, my mother added quietly. That was the third fracture. Because now, even the people who had once defended the system were redefining their place within it. Daniel stepped forward, not as enforcement, not as authority, sure, but as something else entirely. As long as information was controlled, so were we, he said. That's what has to change first. People listened. Not because he held power, but because he had given it up. Transparency, someone repeated. The word spread, not as a slogan, as a necessity. No more hidden records, sure. No more erased histories. No more decisions made behind closed doors and explained afterward as tradition. Belmere didn't need a new system. It needed visibility. And slowly, carefully, people began speaking, not over each other, not in chaos but in pieces. Suggestions, concerns, ideas forming in real time. Sure, imperfect but honest. No one dominated the conversation. That, more than anything, felt different. I stood at the center of it, but no longer as the focus. The attention had moved beyond me. And that was exactly where it needed to go. Elena, someone said. I turned. It was Reeves, not Councilman Reeves. Just Reeves. You've made your position clear, he said. People will listen to you now. You could help shape what comes next. There it was. The offer, power. Should not forced this time. Given, I felt the weight of it immediately, not as temptation, but as responsibility. The same system, a different form. I shook my head. I didn't refuse one system just to lead another. I said. A few people looked surprised. Others understood. I don't want control. I continued. I want choice. That mattered because it clarified something the town hadn't fully said yet. This wasn't about replacing authority. It was about removing its ownership. Daniel glanced at me briefly. A quiet acknowledgement passing between us. Sure, he understood, not because I had explained it, but because he had already crossed the same line. I'll stay, he said, addressing the crowd, not as enforcement, not as authority, but to make sure what was hidden stays visible. That was his transition, not dramatic, not declared, just real. Sure, from protector of the system to protector of truth. The shift in him reflected the shift in Belmere. Not perfect, not complete, but undeniable. As the crowd slowly began to break into smaller conversations, something else began to return. Something that hadn't existed in a long time. Trust, not the blind kind, not the enforced kind, the earned kind. My mother stood beside me again. But this time her hand didn't tremble. My father looked at me, not with fear, not with resignation, but with something closer to pride. We didn't lose you, he said quietly. No, I replied. You just had to see me. That was the difference. Before, Belmere had survived by not seeing. Now, it had to learn how to. The sun had shifted higher in the sky by the time people began leaving the square, not rushed, not scattered, changed, carrying something new with them. Not certainty, but awareness, and that was stronger. I stood there for a moment longer, taking it in. Not as an ending, but as a threshold. Because the system had controlled them for generations. But it had only taken one refusal to end it. And as I finally turned to walk away, I couldn't ignore the thought that settled quietly beneath everything we had just changed. Somewhere beyond Belmere, there were other towns, other systems still waiting for someone else to say no.